What's up, everybody? So, in this video today, we're going to be discussing budgeting in 2025. Now, budgeting is going to be extremely important, especially if you're someone that's trying to get out of debt, you're trying to turn around your finances, and you're just trying to turn a new page or a new chapter in your life. So, the reason why budgeting is so important is because I went through pretty much all phases. I went through the phase of being a poor college student to being an employee to where my 9 to 5 was barely able to kind of keep me afloat, to being a new entrepreneur to where that plus my 9 to 5 income kind of made me feel better about myself. And then I quit my job to start this entrepreneurial journey to now where I'm extremely comfortable with my finances. And throughout this journey, I've learned what works for myself and what does not work. And through all the people that I've studied, that I've watched, the mentors that I've had, budgeting has always been at the base of what I know to be financial literacy. So anytime we want to jump into the topic of financial literacy, it should always start with a budget. And I'm always going to preach this for however long I can talk about creating a budget. So if you're someone in debt, this is usually where the journey starts because you kind of feel like you have no way to go. And so usually people go out and they search for information. And then the fastest way to get out of debt is usually through that tool, right? Is by you budgeting. Because again, you can't get out of that situation without having a roadmap or a plan. You can't expect to create wealth for yourself or your family or whatever your plans are without having a plan, right? So that's what that budget is. It's a tool. It's a plan that you write down that you put in place. When I first started out, I used an Excel sheet for my budget. I'm never going to do that again, but it's a start, right? So wherever you start, and when we're talking about what's important when you're first starting out in your budget, obviously food is extremely important because everyone needs to eat every single day, right? So knowing how much you're spending on food is extremely important. And some people overspend on food. I used to be one of those individuals where I would overspend money on food until I realized that, hey, I don't need to spend as much as I'm currently spending. But again, you don't know how much you're spending until you're spending it. For the people that I have worked with, as far as their budget is concerned, they're always shocked with how much money they spend on food, right? You never really realize it until you put it on paper. The next thing I would say is a place to live is extremely important that you have a place to live. There's no reason why you should ever miss paying your mortgage or your landlord for the place that you're renting. You should never miss a payment because again, you never want to have that thing in the back of your mind where you're worried about, hey, I could possibly get kicked out of my place of living, right? You never want to be in that situation. You want to be able to come home to a place of peace, your home, and be able to lay down comfortably, knowing that your place is paid off, that is being paid off. You're up to date with your payments. That you have some food in the fridge that you can eat. This is the foundation. Is it? Although it sounds like common sense, a lot of people they don't prioritize these things, which is why they end up in the situation that they're in and they don't have a budget in place. So anytime we're trying to set the foundation, let's put the plan in place of having a budget. You don't have to start out with an Excel. There's so many free tools, so many free resources. You shouldn't have to pay anyone to have a budget. I myself, to this day, I've used the Every Dollar Budgeting app, and I think I've been using it ever since 2022. So I've been using it for a long time, and one of the things that I like about it, and one thing I liked about the Every Dollar Budgeting tool is I can go all the way back to when I first started my budgeting, and I could see where my finances were and where my budgeting expectations were, and I can tell you when you start out with creating your budget, it's going to be way off. Like you think you have a clue about how much you spend on food, you don't. You have no idea how much money you spend on things, and I feel like a lot of people are afraid of facing the truth, and but that's what the budget is. A budget is you looking into the mirror and saying, "Hey, this is who you are," right? Because where your money goes, that's where you're casting your vote. So once you start taking track and saying, "Hey, this is where I spend the bulk of my money," you really start to get an idea of who you are as a consumer, right? And it's not to say I'm not going to be one of those people that say, "Hey, you should never spend money." One of my favorite aspects within my budget is the miscellaneous aspect, right? And I believe that that should never be higher than 10%. of your budget. So that miscellaneous, that's going to be if I'm going out to eat with friends, if I'm spending time with my wife, if I'm doing anything that isn't a part of my standard budget, that doesn't include food. And when I say food, I'm not talking about going out to eat. I'm talking about groceries. If it doesn't include, my rent, if it doesn't include any of the necessities, it's going towards the miscellaneous section. And obviously, as your income grows, that miscellaneous section grows, right? So we want to stay disciplined and stick to that plan of, hey, my miscellaneous shouldn't be more than 10%. Because I'm not going to tell you you shouldn't live your life, but you should have something in place to where when you do want to spend time with friends, you have a budget in place and you know you're not going to go over that. Now, me, I like to overestimate. And the reason why I like to do this is, let's just say, for example, with groceries. If because sometimes you're gonna have those months where you do need to spend more than what you normally would, then I won't go over that. But if I don't overspend on groceries, then I know I've saved money that month for quote unquote groceries. That's why I like to overestimate. And I do this with all the categories except for the static things, such as let's just say my car payment or or my mortgage, or not my mortgage, but my place of rent. I know those things won't change in pricing, right? Unless I've been notified about it and then I can update my budget, right? So you want to always overestimate with your budget instead of underestimate, because the last thing you want to do is to spend money that you don't have. Which leads me to my next point. You having a budget in place allows you to create a safety net. And what I mean by safety net is your emergency fund. Most Canadians don't have at least $1,000 saved up, which is pretty sad when you think about it, when we all know that the cost of living in Canada is consistently rising. So you need to have a safety net for the event that something bad happens. Let's just say, for example, your car breaks down and you need to take the metro for the next month. So I live in Montreal, where it's very common for people to take public transportation to get to and from work. So if your car breaks down and you need to take um, the metro for the next month, or you need to take Uber, right? That money needs to come from somewhere, and that's not something that's usually a part of your budget. So it's going to have to come maybe out of your emergency fund, but you can't do that if you don't have an emergency fund, right? Maybe there's a new expense that pops up, and you need to hold yourself over until you're able to comfortably place it into your budget. You need to have an emergency fund. Now, as far as how much we should have for an emergency fund, it should be anywhere between 3 to 6 months worth of monthly expenses. I am extremely conservative when it comes to this topic. I like to lean more towards 6 months. Me, I like 6 months, and some people may say this is a stretch. I I would lean to a year, right? Because you just never know what's going to happen. But I feel I sleep a lot better at night knowing that I have money just in case. We've just kind of exited tax season, and I can just be very transparent and say that I'm very happy I had a safety net in place, right? So you don't want to find yourself in a situation to where you feel like you're on track with your budget, you're paying down your debt, and then out of nowhere, boom, you get a flat tire and you need to replace that wheel on your car, or you need to replace that tire, and then now that money you've been saving, you're wiped out. You're back at zero, or the progress you've been making on paying down your credit card debt, you've had to max that credit card back out again, right? So these things are all put in place to make sure you're consistently making progress. So one of the best people I've watched when it comes to creating a budget, managing your finances, or getting out of debt is always I'm going to always put Dave Ramsey first. I'm always going to give him his credit for the advice he's given out. While he may be a lot more conservative than I am as far as finances, I think for most people is what's needed, because a lot of people lack the discipline to stick to something for an extended amount of time. I could say that's probably one of my skills that I'm blessed with, is that I can stick to something for a X amount of time. But for the average person, you may need someone that's a little bit more upfront with you, like a Dave Ramsey. And you may need to go into hyper conservative, but I'm never going to tell you to sell your car to get out of debt. Right? I'm never going to say that, because I understand. I live in reality. I understand that's not realistic for most people. Okay, but you need to have a budget, especially if we're heading in 2025 beyond. You need a budget. You need a safety net. You need to have money saved away, and you need to make sure that you're out of debt. If you are in credit card debt, that's the worst kind of debt that you can have, because it opens the doors to so many other headaches, so many other issues. I mean, from being sued to having collection accounts and making your credit worse, to you paying the high interest rate on credit cards. Again, interest rate on credit card debt on average is 22%, right? Extremely high, right? So again, um, I'm paying my credit cards off in full, but if you feel like you're an individual to where you can't do that, you probably shouldn't be using credit cards at all until you get extremely comfortable with using a budget. Okay, so again, if you are not good with paying off your credit card in full every single month, do not use one. Get a budget, get comfortable using a budget, and then once you feel confident in your ability to pay things off, allocate your funds appropriately, then you can go back to a credit card. But until you're at that point, stay away from it because again, it can while credit is a great tool, it can put you in a very difficult position. Okay, so um, I'm a big fan of budgeting. I think it really helps you organize your finances, stay out of debt, help you pay down debt, and also helps you build wealth because then you're able to save, invest if you need to, or if you are an entrepreneur and you want to start a business, a lot of times that comes from you being able to budget your money properly and save money. What do you think happens when you start a business and you start having employees that you have to pay? You have to budget for that because God forbid that you're not able to pay your team. What do you think they're going to wait around for you because you're not able to pay them? No, they're going to leave, right? So if you start now with your personal expenses and you budget, and again, these are all things that I have done and I have lived through. You start with your personal master budgeting your personal expenses, and then maybe you do have a business. It's the same thing. You take that experience you have with your personal, bring it over to your business, and then you notice your business is excelling as well because you're keeping track of all your finances there. If you need help with your credit, maybe you're dealing with collection companies and you're in the process of starting your budget and you just have some collection accounts starting your credit and you do need a team to help you out, my team is more than happy to assist you. You can always send us an email, info@kennyjohnsonuniversity.com. We'll be happy to assist you in your credit repair journey. And until next time, peace.